Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Cast. I am the Diggly Doodah Doc, the Peptide Panther, here to deliver a Newscast episode previewing International Representative Round. Don't worry about that State of Origin stuff. We are here for the international footy. I'm going to preview all the relevant fixtures for me. So that means Kiwis versus Tonga. That means Kiwi Ferns versus Fetu Samoa. And that also means Samoa versus Papa New Guinea. Those are the games that hold the most interest for me and probably much of our Newscast audience. You know the deal, support the Newscast however you can. We are on Patreon. You can hit that up for a little donation each month. You can sponsor the Newscast if that's your buzz, if you're business inclined, or just like, comment, subscribe, and rate, review, all that good stuff. And of course, leave us your thoughts, ideas, comments as well, just to get a little bit of a discussion going. We have a couple of very funky games. I'm excited for International Rugby League to finally be here in 2019. And if we are talking International Rugby League, that means we are talking International Rugby League eligibility. So I just want to offer a couple of thoughts on the eligibility, the movement of players between nations before I get into the nitty-gritty of Kiwis versus Tonga, Aotearoa Kiwis versus Tonga. Earlier in the week we had Martin Tapau made the decision to change from Aotearoa to Samoa, which is cool. That's a good move because I've been rather critical of Samoa for a long time now in the rugby league department, and they have a long way to go to make up ground on Tonga and the other nations. The slide that Samoa has been on in the rugby league department has been a concern, and it hasn't been good. So while everyone's been talking up and celebrating Tonga, no one was really paying attention to what was happening with Samoa, where they were going in the other direction. So for Martin Tapau, a player of his quality, a player of his standing in rugby league, to go back to play for Samoa is a good idea. And then also this week it's also been mentioned that Jermaine Sako has changed his allegiance from Aotearoa to Samoa. So just with regards to Sako, I just want to clarify something, because Isako's situation's a bit different, because he's not a better winger than Dylan Watanese-Lesniak or Kemba Malo at the moment, so he's not going to be in the Kiwis team. Depending on Jordan Rapana's health and availability, he's been battling injury with Canberra Raiders, so I don't know how close he was to being selected in this game, but there's a strong case to be made that Jermaine Sako is behind those three, let alone other wingers maybe like Remus Smith or anyone else you want to throw into the mix as well. Guys like Peter Hiku, maybe Jordan Kahu, outside backs like that. Jermaine Sako's played for the Kiwis last year, but right now his club form and the form of the Broncos and the depth chart in that position for Aotearoa is such that Jermaine Sako is well down the pecking order. And so it's a very different situation. That's what I want to highlight here, is that Jermaine Sako was never really going to be selected for the Kiwis in this game. And so he took the second option, which is to play for Samoa. Martin Tapau was always going to be selected for the Kiwis, and he decided, no, now I'm going to pledge my allegiance for Samoa. And this gets into my gut feel about these eligibility situations, is that players need to pick and stick, ride or die. If you are so hearty about that nation, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, USA, maybe you want to represent Jamaica, maybe you want to represent South Africa, Lebanon, whoever it is, make your decision and stick to it. And so Martin Tapau, he has made his decision, and that's not to hate on or throw shade at anyone who has made the decisions to this point. This is my feeling about moving forward to solidify International Rugby League eligibility stuff. Players need to make a decision and stick to it. So Martin Tapau, from this point on, he has made the decision that he was always going to represent Samoa. That's what was so strong about the Tongan players who are now representing Tonga, is that they have pledged to represent Tonga from this moment forth. They're not going to chop and change. So Jermaine Sako is in a weird position because the Kiwis might come calling again, and Jermaine Sako, he has to make a decision. So if I was Jermaine Sako right now, I'd probably, you got to ride or die with Samoa from this point, because you're a bit of a flip-flopper. You represented the Kiwis and you enjoyed that, and then when you weren't selected for the Kiwis, then you go and represent Samoa. And this gets into another idea where I don't like the idea of being able to change between tier 1 and lower tier nations, tier 2 nations. The idea of having tiered nations is also flawed. Why don't we just have International Rugby League? Everyone's involved. You choose your nation that you want to represent. No one's going to criticize you for choosing who you want to represent. That's your decision. Happy days. Peace and love to you all. But don't change that decision when it suits you. And that's a key distinction to make here between Martin Tapau and Jermaine Sako. It's also important to note here, a guy like Martin Tapau, he made his debut for Samoa. And I think it was a 2015 Pacific Test game between Samoa and Tonga. Martin Tapau played against Jason Taumalolo. Might have been 2013 or 2015, but they played their first games for their respective island nations against each other. So, and much of the Tongan players who left Aotearoa Kiwis to go back to Tonga, their first international games were with Tonga. So yeah, that's playing into the whole flip-flop argument, because when it was convenient for them, they decided they wanted to represent Aotearoa, so they flip-flop between Aotearoa and Tonga. But they've made a solid decision. But it's just important to note that they got their first international fixtures with their island nations, so they do have that strong connection to those nations, and it's just a good move. I just really don't want to see players who miss out on Australia's selection or Kiwis selection then having a little sympathy vote to go play for their island nations when it suits them. No, if you're really about the betterment of International Rugby League, you'll always play for Samoa. You'll always play for Tonga. That's what I respect about the Tongan players, because they have made that decision and they are sticking to it. They are sticking solid with representing Tonga. And I bring up a guy like Ignatius Pasi quite a lot in this regard, because he made the decision to leave Tongan camp last year and join the Kiwis on tour to England, and now he is not in the Kiwis, he is not in the Tongan team. So he has made a decision to follow the Kiwis route instead of Tonga, and he has had to deal with the repercussions of that, which means he's not representing Tonga right now because he chose to represent Aotearoa at the most recent outing. But I believe, judging what I know about Ignatius Pasi, that he is sticking to his decision. He will continue to be eligible for Aotearoa. He was selected in that wider squad, I believe. Just got it here. I'm just scrolling through to make sure. Yep, he was selected in the wider squad initially, and then he didn't make the final Kiwis team. But he didn't then decide, I'm going to go represent Tonga. Probably because Tonga wouldn't welcome him back. Well, they might welcome him back, but I think the Tongan team are very set in their morals and ethics about this. And shout out to Ignatius Pasi for doing that, making a decision and sticking to it. Isaiah Papali'i, he has previously represented Samoa. He was selected in the Kiwis wider squad. He didn't make the Kiwis wider squad. So now he's not representing Samoa or Kiwis right now. He's made a decision to go down the Aotearoa Kiwis route, it appears, and he's sticking to that. So it's just about players making a decision and sticking to that decision. It's a tough decision. Who are you going to represent? But that's what you have to decide as an International Rugby League player. You have to decide where your allegiances sit. And when you think about it, New Zealand Rugby League is in the worst position, because players can play State of Origin, and then also play for their island nation. Whereas players just don't want to, if they don't want to represent the Kiwis, there's nothing for the Kiwis there. And the Kiwis put a lot, New Zealand Rugby League is currently putting a lot of time and effort into developing talent through extensive programs, under 16, under 18, tournaments, coaching camps, development camps. They've got their Tōrahire program for the players based in Australia. New Zealand Rugby League is pouring a lot of resource into rugby league players from all backgrounds in Aotearoa, and a lot of those players that they are developing could go on to represent Samoa and Tonga against the Kiwis. So it's an interesting situation that doesn't really help the New Zealand Rugby League. They are developing the talent, but it doesn't end up playing for them. So that's something to pay attention to. But that alternatively, that could lead to a greater allegiance to Aotearoa, because if you're someone like Nelson Asofa-Solomona, who believes that New Zealand has given his family a lot of opportunity, and he repays that opportunity of his parents coming to New Zealand from Samoa, and he is repaying that opportunity that Aotearoa graced his family with loyalty to Aotearoa sports. So you might find that younger players now, if they do have Polynesian heritage, Māori, Samoan, Cook Island, Fijian, whoever they are, that those players might respect the time, effort and resource that New Zealand Rugby League has put into developing that talent, and they might feel that effort and resource from New Zealand Rugby League sees them feeling a greater loyalty to New Zealand Rugby League. So it's a little bit weird for New Zealand Rugby League, because they've stepped up their development stuff. They've poured a lot of resource into that, but on the surface that might not end up so well, because players might just leave. Another little note here, so this is quite funny. 2017 Junior Kiwis team, Manasi Whainu, Moeaki Fotuaika and Satili Tuponuia were all on the Junior Kiwis bench for 2017. Manasi Whainu and Satili Tuponuia, they are named in this Tongan team, the top 17 for Tonga. Moeaki Fotuaika would have definitely been in that Tongan team if he was healthy. So 3 players from the Junior Kiwis bench in 2017 playing for Tonga. The halves for the Junior Kiwis, Chanel Harris-Tavita and Jerome Luai, were both named for Samoa in 2017. This is a weird topic to raise, though. The Junior Kiwis, I think a lot of along with the development schemes that a lot of New Zealand Rugby League is putting into their development pathways and support for younger players, you're seeing a lot more players of Māori heritage make it to a certain level in rugby league. So the 2008 Junior Kiwis team that lost to the Junior Kangaroos quite heavily was predominantly Māori. So if there's more Māori players, they're going to feel a lot more allegiance to Aotearoa Kiwis as opposed to the Island Nation. So just the cultural diversity in those lower grade and lower kind of youth ranks could be interesting, because I'm looking at this 2018 Junior Kiwis backline. Hayes Perham, he's Māori. Stephen Masters, Māori Cook Islander, named in the Cook Island squad, shout out to him. Morgan Harper, he's a Māori. Jackson Ferris from the Manawatu, he's a Māori. Mawane Horoti, he's a Māori. So that's the whole back 5 for the Junior Kiwis in 2018. The creme de la creme of the junior rugby league talent from Aotearoa under the age of 20. They are all Māori. That whole backline, Māori. So just interesting ideas to watch out for as we move forward in this eligibility situation. My whole general thought, though, is that this is the growing pain stage. So don't get too caught up in how International Rugby League eligibility sits right now, because it's going to change. It's fluid. It's going to be developing, and we're still in this very reactionary phase to what happened with Tonga and the players who left the Kiwis from the World Cup squad to go play for Tonga. Like, a lot of people are still referring to those players as ex-Kiwis players, or players that, turned their back on Kiwis at the World Cup. No, that's in the past. But we're still reacting to that because these are the growing pains. I don't see them as pains, but a lot of people, by judging how they react to it, they are definitely painful. But it's just that stage in this whole situation where everyone's trying to assess the new International Rugby League landscape and how everything sits. And it's a bit niggly at the moment, but over the next few years, it'll all flatten out. Everything will be pretty solid, and we're going to have a good International Rugby League situation. Right, this Aotearoa versus Tonga game is a fascinating experiment of two contrasting rugby league styles. Tonga have the forward pack. They have the great forwards, even without Andrew Fafita, who has been suspended. Adam Whenua-Blake comes in to start at prop. He's a great prop. He's a great middle forward. And as we know, rugby league, everything starts in the forward pack. Rugby league, to win a game of footy, you need to have some control of the ruck. You need to be getting quick play the balls, and you need to be physically dominant in the middle of the field, which plays into Tonga's hands. That's what makes Tonga such a difficult team to defeat, to play against, is because of their forward pack. However, Tonga have John Asiata and Tuimoala Lolohea in the halves. So they don't quite have the playmaking, the experience, the skill, the class, the game control that the Kiwis have. The Kiwis have Sean Johnson and Benji Marshall. And an amazing halves combination when you think about it. Sean Johnson's been playing for the Kiwis consistently over the last kind of 5, 6, 7 years. Benji Marshall, arguably the greatest rugby league player from Aotearoa ever. So this is a beautiful halves combination, having Sean Johnson and Benji Marshall together. They are good kickers of the footy, they are good runners of the footy, they are good passers of the footy, they have experience, they have footy nous. And so this becomes a battle of the great forward pack versus the team who are more likely to be able to control the game better via those halves. And it's just you got two very different skill sets or strengths for either team, and it's just very interesting to see which style of footy or which strength in the playmaking or in the forward pack ends up being victorious in an international game of footy, because international rugby league is a bit different to NRL footy. It's more similar to State of Origin in the sense that Queensland won a State of Origin because they were the team that for 80 minutes did all the 1%ers. They showed up all the time. They played with greater energy, greater effort, and made those small plays that add up to a solid win. International footy is more aligned with that, where it's less about the amazing moments of brilliance or attacking. Like in NRL footy, I think you see a lot where teams get on a little run of momentum. International footy, you're not going to have that momentum as such. You're going to have set for set grind. You're going to have to stay in the contest, and it's a bit more of a war of attrition where you have to stick at your task and then reap the rewards later on. I'll talk about these Tongan halves now. John Asiata has been playing. He plays a bit of halves for the Cowboys, but he doesn't really do a whole lot, to be honest. He does some ball playing. He's got good hands, but I think I did the stats this morning when I wrote about this. He averages like 2 kicks per game, whereas Michael Morgan averages 12. And even when young Jake Clifford's been in the halves, he averages 6 or... yeah, I think it's 6 kicks per game. So when John Asiata, he hasn't played every game in the halves, so keep that in mind, but 2 kicks per game isn't a whole lot. He is going to be an extra pair of hands, but what concerns me about these Tongan halves combination is that Tuimoala Lolohea has been playing with Leeds in the Super League. Leeds are currently 10th out of 12 teams, so that's not a great sign of great form. And I think there's going to be a fairly clear plan from the Kiwis to target those halves. If John Asiata's not quite offering 50-50 split in the responsibility of kicking, passing, organisation, the Kiwis will simply load up on Tui Lolohea. And if John Asiata does want to step up his playmaking, the Kiwis will put John Asiata under all sorts of pressure. And you've got to think, compared to Shaun Johnson, John Asiata doesn't have the mobility to avoid and deal with pressure. Shaun Johnson, if you put pressure on Shaun Johnson, he's going to evade that pressure and create something elsewhere. Where the Kiwis can load up pressure on John Asiata, it's going to be difficult to load up pressure on Tui Lolohea because he's got light feet, he's fast, he's got good footwork, he's strong enough to get a fend and bump away. John Asiata is not as mobile, he's the least mobile half in this game, and that's going to be, it's like a sitting duck scenario. He's going to be there waiting to be pressured. So I'm very interested to see how that halves combination works for Tonga, but it all starts with that forward pack. If that forward pack can generate a tempo and get quick play the balls, get 10 metres per run, quick play the ball, and then suddenly Tokiaho's having a run, 10 metres, quick play the ball, and then suddenly Whenua Blake's having a run, 10 metres, quick play the ball. Oh, then Jason Taumalolo cuts him back behind the ruck, he's made 15 metres, quick play the ball. That's a nightmare. That's the worst case scenario for the Kiwis, and to be honest, it's kinda unstoppable. And that is what we are dealing with here. When I say contrasting styles, the Tongan forward pack is good enough to offer that nightmare for the Kiwis. What I will say about this Kiwis forward pack is they may not have the big names, they may not have the highlight act, they may not have the best forwards in the world. Jesse Bromwich is still a good forward though. He's my favourite middle forward in the NRL, and he's still one of the best props in the game, if not the best prop with his footwork. Jason Taumalolo, Tokiaho, they might have something to say about that. Jared Waerea-Hargreaves, grizzly, experienced, gritty, niggly forward. Kenny Bromwich, Britton Nakora starting on edge, Isaac Liu, you're going to have Lisanar Mao, you're going to have Asafa Solomona, and Fisher Harris coming off the bench. The point about this Kiwis forward pack is they are well equipped to just do their job, to just do a job on the Tongan forward pack, try their best to contain them. They'll be wrestling them, they'll wrestle them, they'll get numbers into the tackle, they'll look to slow Tonga down as much as possible. And I'm not saying that the Kiwis forward pack is going to outplay Tonga's forward pack, but I am eager to see this Kiwis forward pack just deal with Tonga's forward pack, because that's all they really need to do. Because if you can maintain parity and a level footing with Tonga's forwards, then it's up to Shaun Johnson, Benji Marshall and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, and that's exactly where the Kiwis have a huge advantage over Tonga. Because if it's not Shaun Johnson or Benji Marshall's footwork and playmaking, it's Tuivasa-Sheck's footwork. And if it's not their footwork, it's Esan Masters. If it's not Esan Masters, then it's Joey Manu. That whole backline has the ability to beat a defender one-on-one and create something for someone else, or generate their own good run, quick play the ball. Especially if the Kiwis are going to be forcing Tuimoala Lolohea to do a lot of defense, or maybe they're going to target Solomon and Kata. If Kata and Lolohea are on the same edge, I can see the Kiwis sending a lot of traffic their way. If they are on different edges, for Aotearoa, that's a good scenario because they can target Kata on one edge, or they can target Lolohea on the other. And it's not necessarily about Lolohea and Kata being mediocre defenders. It's about they are coming up against Shaun Johnson and Benji Marshall, with Joseph Manu and Esan Masters working with them. Shaun Johnson already has a combination with Britton Nakora, who's a fantastic line running edge forward. So he's going to be running off Shaun Johnson, and probably he's going to be running at Tui Lolohea if he's on that edge. So you've got this strength of the Kiwis game where they are going to be shifting the footy. They have to lay a platform in the middle. They have to do their job in the middle, but I think you're going to see the Kiwis hit the edges frequently and really force Tonga to compensate for that, which may open more space back through the middle. So I see the Kiwis playing a classy game of footy where they do shift the footy and turn Tonga around. So good kicking game, peg Tonga down their own end, be very aggressive in the first few tackles to limit the impact of the outside backs. And if you can win, same story that I always talk about with the Warriors, how they're very aggressive in those first few tackles, but against Tonga, if you can win the first few tackles and after a good kick, so you kick long, Tonga receive the ball within 10 metres, in their 10 metre zone off their try line, and the Kiwis are very good in the first 3 tackles against the outside backs, they don't make too much ground, then suddenly you're limiting the influence of the Tongan forward pack because they are having to make far more difficult runs. Yeah, they may still make good runs, but the kicks are going to be from 40 metres out of Tonga's try line. And if that's happening with just Tuilola here doing the kicking, that's a very good scenario for the Kiwis. Tonga is all about the forward pack. They just have to generate tempo and a certain speed of the play the ball, and through gaining metres, scattering defenders, the footwork of Taumalolo and Tokiaho. Again, if Tonga's forward pack get a roll on, that's a nightmare to defend against. I'm very interested to see the work of Brandon Smith, Jerome Hughes and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck around the ruck. Obviously Brandon Smith's going to be playing hooker. I suspect we'll see Jerome Hughes come on at hooker and give Brandon Smith a little break. So they are going to be darting around the ruck. They're going to be forcing repeat efforts. They're going to be very influential around the ruck. But hopefully, I hope that Michael Maguire has sussed out a plan for Tuivasa-Sheck to just hover around the ruck and really target Tonga's middle forwards, because yes, they are rampaging with the footy, but are they going to be able to stop Roger Tuivasa-Sheck cutting in behind the ruck or Brandon Smith darting out a dummy half? It's about forcing repeat efforts and forcing Tonga's forwards to play under greater fatigue. Very also excited to see this Kiwis bench. Lisanar Mau, Asafa Solomona and Fisher Harris come on because they're all very mobile. Lisanar Mau's got footwork. He's going to shimmy around Tonga. Nelson Asafa Solomona, big unit, mobile unit, who is going to be generating good meters and quick play the balls. Fisher Harris, he offers that energy, and you're going to, there's good players here to put pressure on the Tongan halves. Wairea Hargraves, he's a bit of a dick, but he's, in terms of pressuring opposition halves, which is good for Aotearoa in this scenario. James Fisher Harris, he's going to be rushing off the line to put Lola here and Asiata under pressure. Very interesting contest. You got just 2 different styles, and I'm very excited to see, just on an experimental level, which style is more conducive to success over the other. Tonga have the forward pack. They've got good players in their backline, but their strength is their forward pack. The Kiwis, their strength compared to Tonga is in the class and the quality of their playmakers. So then it becomes a battle of whether the Kiwis forward pack can outperform the Tongan halves, if you follow me there. So it's not necessarily the strength, it's about the weaker area of either team, how they rate against each other. So can the Kiwis forward pack do a decent enough job against the Tongan forward pack? And can Tonga's halves do a decent, good enough job to keep Tonga in the contest and maintain some control of this game? As for the Kiwi Ferns taking on Fiji, the Kiwi Ferns, I did see a team. Let me just pull up the actual playing list because I've just got the squad here. The Kiwi Ferns team, you got Api Nichols at fullback. Madison Bartlett is a new name. She's going to start on the wing. Honey Hirami skippers the team from centre. Kiana Takarangi, the sister of Brad Takarangi, starts at centre. Hilda Mariu's on the wing. Raquel Anderson Pittman and Racine McGregor in the halves. Aneta Claudia Nuasala is at prop. Crystal Rota is at hooker. Aishali Smalley is at prop. Kathleen Fortin is another new name. She starts on one edge, and then the amazing Tuila Fotumawala starts on another edge. Georgia Hale starts at lock. I think she played in the halves last year for the Kiwi Ferns against Australia, and now she's starting at lock. Nita Maynard is at hooker. Amber Paris Hall is on the bench. Amber Cunny's on the bench. Crystal Tamarua is on the bench. Shante Poko and Jules Newman are in the wider extended bench. Amber Paris Hall named on the bench for the Kiwi Ferns. She has earned herself a Brisbane Broncos NRL women's contract. She's the first player from Aotearoa to get a contract this year. Kiana Takarangi, I believe she plays for the Cronulla Sharks over in Australia, while Tuila Fotumawala has been playing in Sydney for the North Sydney Bears alongside Nita Maynard, who was part of the Roosters NRL women's team last year. So got a couple of players based out of Australia. We got a large contingent who play their footy in Auckland on the weekends, and I suspect the Kiwi Ferns will be too good for Fetu Samoa. And there's a large contingent of Kiwi Ferns not playing for this game either. Let me just pull that up. I know Maitua Fetarika is not playing she has not been named for the Kiwi Ferns. She was part of the Brisbane Broncos championship team last year with the NRL Women's. Then we have Kali Takawa and Ngā Tokotoru Arakua. They were both part of the Broncos team. Angelina Liatawa and Langi Vainu were with the Warriors. They are not selected, while Laura Mariu is not named as well. So that's 5 or 6 top tier talents who aren't in this Kiwi Ferns team, just to remember as we move forward. Samoa. What do we have for Samoa coming up against Papua New Guinea? Jermaine Sako has been named fullback. George Taufua and David Noafaluma are your wingers. Haimel Hunt, Marian Seve are your centres. Chanel Harris-Tavita is in the halves alongside Anthony Milford. Junior Paulo and James Gave start at prop. Martin Tapau's at lock. Raymond Faitala Mariner and Jaden Su'a on the edges. Jerome Luai starting at hooker. Mason Lino's off the bench. Michael Cheekham, Herman Ese, Josh Alawai. So Herman Ese is in the same category as Jermaine Sako. Like, they didn't make this Kiwis team, so then they go back to represent Samoa. I find that a bit weird. Just choose one nation and stick to it. Jerome Luai playing a hooker is a bit weird as well. Chanel Harris-Tavita, I thought he was Tongan, but he is eligible for Samoa, so that's a good get for Samoa to have a quality half. When you compare Tonga's halves to Samoa's halves, Chanel Harris-Tavita, Anthony Milford, Jerome Luai, Mason Lino, and Fa'amanu Brown. Fa'amanu Brown is 18th man. They can all play in the halves. So Samoa have the halves. Tonga has the forwards. Samoa has the halves to be competitive at this level. So if you're a Tongan fan, you're like, oh, Samoa, give me some of those halves. Like, even just Fa'amanu Brown would be great for Tonga. Mason Lino would be great for Tonga. Obviously, they're Samoan, so they're helping Samoa. Samoa have very good edge forwards, Faitala Mariner and Jaden Su'a. Faitala Mariner is the same. He played in the Denver Test last year for the Kiwis, didn't make this Kiwis team, so he plays for Samoa. Like, I understand how not being selected for the Kiwis and then going to help Samoa is good, but as we move forward and Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, if they get to where they want to get to, where we all want them to get to as a competitive international team, they're tier 1 nations. There's no tier nations, so suddenly just because you don't get selected for the Kiwis, then you can go and represent Samoa. I just find that very strange. Very eager, excited, full of anticipation to see what Samoa can do against Papa New Guinea. Don't really know what Papua New Guinea is going to dish up. They have Kyle Leibat in the halves. He plays for the Cowboys, or he's part of the Cowboys. James Seguiaro starts at hooker. Reese Martin on an edge. And then you've got the standard Papua New Guinea guys who tend to play. Can Samoa, if Samoa lose to Papua New Guinea here, that's a huge blow for Samoa and Rugby League, given the players that they have available for this game. This is a low-key, pretty strong Samoan team that would put in a far greater showing than what Samoa put against Tonga last year. This Samoan team's far better on paper, and if they cannot defeat Papua New Guinea in this game, that's going to be a rather hefty blow for Samoa. Junior Paulo comes back for Samoa. He's a huge bonus. And the mobility and power off the bench with Michael Cheekam, Herman Ese, and Josh Alawai also catches the eye there. If it's your buzz, I broke down the where the players, the Kiwi NRL players in these games, with their clubs. So these are players who I consider in my Kiwi NRL encyclopedia who played their junior footy in Aotearoa. Doesn't matter who they go on to represent, Samoa, Tonga, Jamaica if they want to play for Jamaica, Aotearoa, whoever they represent. If they played their junior footy in New Zealand, if they were born in New Zealand, I consider them under the Kiwi NRL umbrella. So in my Tonga versus Aotearoa preview, I listed all those players and their junior clubs or their region they are from. So I'll just quickly roll through that for Samoa and Tonga. Who cares about Aotearoa? You can read that. I'll make you go read that. But for Samoa, Josh Alawai, Glenora Bears, Whaamanu Brown, Hornby Panthers in Christchurch, Michael Cheekam, Mount Wellington Warriors, Herman Ese, Mangere East Hawks, Raymond Faitala Mariner, Otahu Leopards, James Gavey, Richmond Bulldogs, Jermaine Isako, Aranui Eagles in Christchurch, Mason Lino, Maris Saints, Chanel Harris Tavita, Pakaranga Jaguars, Tonga, Dave Fusatua, Maris Saints, Saliva Havili, Manuriwa Marlins, Solomon Kata, First 15 Rugby with Sacred Heart College, Sione Katoa, Randwick Kingfishers and Upper Hutt Tigers in Wellington, Manu Ma'u, Maris Saints, Yosua Tokiaho, Otara Scorpions, Jason Tamaloto, Papakura Seagulls and Otahu Leopards, Penny Terapo, Mangere East Hawks and Satili Tuponuia Maris Saints. Big it up, Aotearoa, Samoa and Tonga. Aotearoa Kiwis, Kiwi Ferns will be back after this weekend's footy to dissect what has happened, especially in this rugby league experiment that is Aotearoa Kiwis versus Tonga. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, and we'll see you next week. Later, bye.